Around the same time, in June of that year, his still Father Rifan is inviting his whole parish to join in the procession of Corpus Christi of the Novus Ordo Cathedral. The faithful will not follow him, but he goes there with some priests. And will explain, if we did not do that, our agreement with Rome would have been jeopardized. Already there you see that Father Rifan is putting himself under the pressure of Rome, who pushes him towards the new. Rome will act very gently, but very steadily. Next step, the Jubilee of the Bishop of the Diocese of Campos. There is, of course, for that occasion, a great pontifical new Mass. And Rome invites Bishop Rifan to go to that Mass. Isn't it normal? Now you have normal relations with the Church, so you have to show yourself at that Mass. You must go. And he goes. He's dressed like a bishop. He's not dressed like a celebrant, but with his liturgical garments, with the rochet, with the rosetta, he goes to that Mass. Next step, the Requiem Mass of the very bishop who had demolished them and kicked them out of their parishes. Archbishop Navarro, at the time Archbishop of Niterói, very close to Rio de Janeiro. So, Bishop Rifan is there at that Mass, and during the Mass, the nuncio, who is also there, explains to Bishop Rifan that he should go to communion at that Mass. And Bishop Rifan goes to communion, to that new Mass. Sometimes later on, this time it is the Mass of Jubilee, of Thanksgiving for the new Cardinal of Sao Paulo, Cardinal Scheider. Bishop Rifan is present again at that Mass. This time he's not with liturgical vestments, he's just as I'm here now. But he's in the presbyterium, he's in the choir. And a seminarian, a modern seminarian, does clearly see that Bishop Rifan, at the time of the consecration, raises the hand like all the other concelebrants. September 2004. Centennial of the coronation of the patron of Brazil, Our Lady of the Aparecida. Bishop Rifan again has been invited to this super concelebration. You have the delegate of the Pope, you have cardinals, you have bishops, and we have the videotape of the Brazilian television, a 3-hour tape which shows the whole ceremony, where you will see a representation of Eve, dressed as probably Eve was. It was not much on her. At Mass, during the Mass, you have a procession of the Gospel where you have people who are carrying the Old Covenant. Well, okay, the communion is given by women. There were not enough priests. Priests will receive communion from the ladies at that Mass. And amongst them, totally dressed as one of theirs, Bishop Rifan. Bishop Rifan, after he has been denounced by ourselves, will try to justify himself. And here is his justification. Oh, you know, I could not refuse. I had to go. There was the representative of the Pope at that Mass. I had been invited. I could not refuse. But I did not say the words of consecration. I simulated. It's his words. He may have forgotten that the simulation of the sacrament is a mortal sin. And I may say, for one time, you have somebody who is going to sin by not saying the new Mass. It's terrible. What is he doing? You see? This little gentle pressure from Rome brings Bishop Rifan to worse and worse and worse and worse. He's there, he's with them, he raises the hand at the time of consecration. For all the people who are there, it's obvious he has concelebrated. He tries to get out of the trap by saying that he did not say the words of consecration. But if he just kept them for him, and everybody thinks he did, he's cheating. He's cheating the modern as he's cheating the old. Everybody. And now, because this is starting to make some turmoil, we have an official statement from the priest of Campos, or more precisely from the spokesman. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. More or less he says, well, if you don't say the Mass which the Pope says, you are schismatic. Here we are. Remember that when the agreement was done between Campos and Rome, the theologian of the Pope said, now they have accepted the council. The next step will be the concelebration. There is a psychological dynamic in the church. And it is true. And if you throw yourself in this dynamic, you will go the same way. And let's not be presumptuous. If you throw yourself into the temptation, how can you pretend then that you're going to resist to it? All of you, those who had to make the choice one day between the new and the old, they know how much it costs. How much it costs to lose so many friends, so many relations. It's a very heavy and difficult decision to take. And it's easy to understand that once you have thrown yourself in the hands of this modern Rome, it's easy for Rome, provided they go gently, to make tremendous pressure. That's the story around us. And I just hope that with these examples you may understand a little bit better why we do not jump into this trap. Of course, there are very interesting sides. If you think, well, we will be recognized and so on and so on. But what does it mean to be recognized if the end is the new Mass? We don't want the new Mass. If we are here, it's because we don't want it. And why do we refuse it? Not just because we don't like it, but because it is poisonous. And now, next step, more precisely, our relation with Rome. And then the third, if you are still awake and ready, Casper, I'd like to have you some insight in Casper's explanation in Ecumenism. I think it's very, very enlightening. Well, you will see. So, for us, last year, around the same time and now, there was not much happening with Rome. To a certain extent, Rome wanted a secret meeting or something, and we did not move. In fact, I am convinced now that the Mass, which Castrion celebrated on the 24th of May last year, for him, subjectively speaking, it was such an heroic act that we would have no question anymore and would sign everything. I think that was his presentation, his apprehension of things. Of course it's not, but subjectively speaking, I think that's his vision. You know, you had very interesting things about that Mass, which was fine, that the Cardinal would celebrate the Mass in Santa Maria Maggiore. That's very good. But he feared. At the start, he was the thing was initiated where we had a little trick. We did not go directly. We went through another person, but we are at the initiative of that story, well, behind the curtains. And at the start, the Cardinal was willing to do something. Then he realized that there would be opposition. And in fact, there was more than opposition. There was a real torpedo which was shot at everybody. There was a sudden announcement in the newspapers that at the occasion of this Mass, well, first that he would celebrate the Old Mass, and that at this occasion, 3 of the bishops of the society would join, and the 4th one would refuse. Don't know whether you remember that. So that was a very, very bad blow, but you know where did this rumor come from? It came from straight within the Vatican. It came from somebody who wanted to kick at the same time the Cardinal and cause trouble in the society. And it was published by a reporter, a Vaticanist, who said, well, did not say the name, but there are not so many. So, well, don't give it because we are not 100% sure. We're only 98%. So. Anyway, it's from the surroundings of Cardinal Castrion. And when he saw that, he took fear. And then he tried to justify what he was doing, and he brought in a mess, because he said that the reason for that was to thank the Holy Father for the Ecclesia Dei Afflicta thing and so on. Now, the Ecclesia Dei Afflicta, that's the very text which is excommunicating the Archbishop Lefebvre and ourselves. So you can think how happy we were about that. But it was clearly a political strike. He tried to, yes, get out of this hate from the progressists and maybe other bad blows. You know, the night of this day, we receive, when I say we, priest of the society, well, just one of my right hands in these dealings, received a phone call from the secretary of the Cardinal Castrion, in all panic. The Cardinal will have to go to the Secretary of State. He has been convoked because of the sermon he gave today. Can you give us some elements, some proofs that the Mass has never been abrogated. And so we produced the elements to prove that the Mass had never been abrogated for a meeting which never happened. The same, or one day later, the cardinal would need a letter from Bishop Fellay, in which he would thank the Pope for these occasions and so on. So I did not move. A little bit later on, I wrote a letter about something totally different, where I also thanked for this Mass, but in such a way that it could not be used in God knows which direction. But once again, I am persuaded that for the Cardinal, he had done there something so great, so generous, that we would appreciate that and say, okay, we have nothing to object. We have nothing to object to his person, but to what he sees, to what he thinks. And of course, Castrillon is not yet the whole Vatican. So nothing happens. And he's a little bit disappointed. So much that in the beginning of December, it seems, I received a message from a priest who had just left us and visited him. Well, don't say, he said to me, don't say that you still have relations with Rome because the Cardinal has dropped the whole matter. He does not want to speak with you anymore, and so on. On the 30th of December, nevertheless, this same Cardinal Castrillon sends me a letter in which he makes anew the proposal which he had already made. Nothing new, but just a repetition. He proposes again to have this agreement with Rome. On the conditions he gives, we have to submit effectively to the Pope and recognize his authority. We have to recognize the Council in the light of tradition. We have to accept the validity of the new Mass, provided it is celebrated with the right intention to celebrate the sacrificial Mass and correctly. And there will be a commission to study the problems which remain. I was just wondering what's going on. Why does the Cardinal send exactly the same proposal which we had already said we could not accept just like that? We would request first other steps. I don't know what's going on. Right at that moment, I was sending to the cardinals a study on ecumenism. And so I thought, okay, now he gets an answer to his letter. It's not exactly what he expects, but it's an answer. This study on ecumenism, in fact, we had prepared for the 25th anniversary of the pontificate of the Pope. But in October, he got sick, to the point that my advisors told me, well, if you send now this letter, they will say that you killed the Pope. So I thought, okay, we can't do that. Or at least they will say, well, you took advantage of his sickness to just throw him a blow. The purpose of that letter was absolutely not political. It was really to deal with a major problem. And so I really wanted to say in front of the church, we refuse to be in communion with the people who promote such an ecumenism, because they demolish the church. We cannot be in communion. And I really wanted to say it, and so I was just, how do we do it now? And so finally we used this letter to the cardinals. It was a way if you want, you have several things in it. First, clear statement, this ecumenism is demolishing the church. We cannot go that way. Secondly, we say to the cardinals, please, you are the advisor of the Pope. Now you have to tell him. Tell him he's the boss. So we show in this letter, which is a very strong letter, very strong attack, that at the same time we do recognize the authority of the Pope. It was something very delicate. You attack the Pope and at the same time say you recognize his authority. It's not easy. And I think we managed to do that. Because if you attack the Pope just like that, they say, well, okay, you are schismatic, so go away. So that was certainly not what we wanted. And anyway, while they had to digest this letter about ecumenism, nothing much happened on the level more practical of this proposal. And so Cardinal was again unhappy. But he let me know that he had prepared an answer to this letter on ecumenism, even 2 letters. So, as nothing came, I let him know that I had prepared a letter in answer to his letter. And so we stood for a few months, kind of, I have a letter, I too have a letter. It went so far that a prelate of the Catholic Church, official, visiting him, received a storm from the cardinal. I can tell you, this prelate was shaken for a good week of this meeting with the cardinal. He called me about every day. He was even his voice was still trembling. What happened? Well, it seems that the cardinal made the big show. He stood up during the discussion, threw his fist on the table. If Bishop Fellay is not giving me an answer in the 2 coming weeks, I'm going to excommunicate him. And so on. Well, I did not move. Then came the interview to the Latin Mass, where he said interesting things. Well, of course, he's pleading for the traditional-minded people who should not be considered as citizens of second zone. Fine. But also, he says that Campos had been made possible thanks to the accomplishment of 2 conditions. First, an act of contrition, and secondly, an act of humility. So when I read that, I thought, now I have a good reason to answer or to write a letter to the Cardinal, which I did. And so in June of this year, I sent again. That was the answer to the letter of December. Basically, it might be the next letter to the Friends and Benefactors, in fact. I said, listen, you want to throw the deck of the bridge. That's very kind from you. But if we don't start by building the pillars, the piles, this deck is not going to hold. If we ask for this Mass, if we ask for the excommunication to be annulled, it is not just something tactical. It's the way, something ontological we have to go through. There are necessary phases which we have to go through before. I use also arguments which are totally ad hominem in the letter. Something like, well, you were able to lift up the excommunication of the Orthodox, saying that it would make the dialogue easier. So why not with us? And by the way, the Orthodox, they have not changed anything in their relation with Rome. They do not recognize the authority of Rome. We do. And then I continue, and about these formulas you want us to sign. We are not going to sign them. They may be right, taken in se, in absolute. These phrases may be acceptable. That is to say that the new Mass, provided it is celebrated correctly, with the intention to celebrate the sacrifice of the Mass, oh yes, the new Mass then will be valid. So why now do we say that we are not going to sign it? Because that's not the problem. The problem is elsewhere. And to sign such a sentence means, once again, we are cheating. Let me explain. What is the problem with the new Mass? The problem with the new Mass is not first the problem of valid or not valid. The problem is, does this Mass give the grace to the soul or demolish Catholicism? And the answer, very clear. This new Mass in itself is poison. If you want to picture, Rome says, okay, we have now disputed for years and years and years about that soup. Let's say, we are not going to oblige you to drink it, but at least you must say that it is a soup. And we say, well, we know that it is a soup, but it's poison. There's poison in it. So we don't want to call it soup. We want to call it poison. If you call it soup, then you will have people who will drink of it. If you call it poison, you won't. And if we call it soup today, tomorrow Rome will say, hey, you said it's a soup. Now you have to drink it. You see, Rome says or claims that we are the bad guys. We would be, supposedly, those who have done the wrong thing by refusing this implementation or these new ways of vision and application of the Council and the Mass. So we are the troublemakers, we are the bad guys. And so Rome is still the good father. And the good father comes to us, bad guys, and say, okay, I have mercy for you, so I'm very gentle for you. I'm going to ask you just the minimum. You just show that you recognize these things. No, we can't. Even if the phrase itself, once again, is acceptable. Because it's cheating, it's leading the people in the error. When Rome has a problem with somebody, yes, she requests a profession of faith. And that's the new profession of faith. That is, you have to accept Vatican II and the new Mass. A very curious profession of faith. When you hear from the same cardinal that this council is different from the others because because it's a pastoral council. He said that in one of the meetings, it was last April. When I speak like that, I may give you the impression that I'm constantly speaking with the cardinal. Not exactly. The first time we met was on the, I think, 16th of August, 2000. Second time, 30th of December. Third time, 16th of January. Fourth time, April 2003. And fifth time, September 2005. That's it. In 5 years, that's not too much. And some letters, not many. Most of the time, the contacts go through third or double third person. So there are some relations, it is true, but so to say, we keep the contact, not much more. We try to use that for, let's say, as far as we can, to show that we still recognize Rome. It's important. And on the other hand, we try to bring our arguments. If there is absolutely no talk, no relation, we cannot even bring these thoughts to Rome. And I may say we see that there are fruits. Maybe not as many as we wish, but there are some fruits. For example, this year, the Archbishop of Ravenna said to his clergy, if we continue to say today that the Mass is a sacrifice, the Church owes that to Archbishop Lefebvre. He said it this year. If today we continue to say that the Mass is a sacrifice, we owe that to Archbishop Lefebvre. The Church owes that to Archbishop Lefebvre. So, one Archbishop who is starting to think about the new Mass, who said to us, well, we studied your book and we came to the conclusion that we had forgotten something. It's something essential. You have other bishops who tell us the Church needs you, but please stay as you are. Don't change. This also is new. 5 years ago, we did not hear such things from the bishops. We heard rather things like, you are excommunicated, why don't you obey me, what are you doing in my diocese, or things of that type. Or this one, I am happy that you visit our priests, please continue, they need that. And these quotes I've given you now are from bishops in France. Yes. Which shows that this monolith, and they are still strong, is finding somewhere a crack. Now we have some bishops in France who speak like that with us. We don't claim that it's already the victory, no. But we say, listen, look, in Italy we have some, in France, in Rome, in the Curia. All these things, I'm sure they happen because of these relations, because of this communicating of, let's say, of thoughts. But for the time being, there is nothing, let's say, concrete on the side of Rome. One archbishop in the Curia, don't make a cosmetic agreement with Rome. He said that in January. In September he said 3 times, don't make an agreement with Rome. He continued by saying the Pope is no longer governing the Church. He does not even know that he has given me a nomination. He said, when I asked the Pope, do you know the reason why he changed me? The Pope answered him, he did not know. And this prelate, high prelate in the Korea says, there are 5 persons which are governing the Church now. The Secretary of the Pope, the MC of the Pope, that is the persons which are the closest to him, and then Cardinal Sodano, Sepe, and Ray. And Cardinal Ratzinger, from his place, the Palace of the Holy Office, showing with a finger the apartments of the Pope and the Secretary of State, says, I am the Dean of the Cardinals, and I have absolutely no idea of what's going on up there. That's the situation of the Church now. You may understand that we are rather cautious. And now, a deeper argument, which I think shows also why we act as we do, and it is ecumenism. Ecumenism is presented by the Pope himself as the key of his pontificate. That is the big thing. The thing where he has directed all his energies, ecumenism. And he constantly says, ecumenism is irreversible, we will never change, never go back, that's the way, we continue this way. Okay. Now, it's the Pope who has appointed as his right hand for ecumenism Cardinal Casper. Casper was a long-time secretary of the Pontifical Council for the Promotion of the Unity of Christians, and now he's, as Cardinal, the head of the same council. The advantage of Casper on other people is that he speaks a usually understandable language. You have many in the church today who speak in an absolutely ununderstandable language, which is pure garbage. But no. That's probably because of his background. He first made his he was a disciple of Cardinal Szewczyk, who was a Thomist at Tübingen. And then he had as a second master Hans Küng. Casper is a disciple of Hans Küng. That explains, on one hand, why he's so clear, and on the other hand, how he can go so far. It's a curious combination. But now Casper is the right hand of the Pope. He says a lot of things. He writes in the Osservatore Romano, gives conferences all over. He's leading, really, the ecumenism. And please allow me to give you, during a few minutes, some of what he says, to show you what is really ecumenism. And that you may understand that to say that we refuse to be in communion with such a man is not a strong statement. When I say ecumenism, what do you think is ecumenism? we may give as a definition something like a movement which through dialogue will seek the conversion of the other Christians. So there is the element is the other Christians, the element is dialogue with them, the purpose, of course, unity. Which unity? That they may come back to the church they have left. Now, such a definition of ecumenism is the traditional definition. Now, I say traditional, I have already here a problem because ecumenism does not exist in the Catholic Church till the 50s. There are certain movements in the Church which seek union with Christians, but the word ecumenism and the thing itself is Protestant. It's the Protestant. It started with youth groups, students, Sweden, England, and in the late 19th century, amongst the Protestants. I think it's capital to understand that. Because a Protestant who say we have to seek unity is basing his phrase on principles which are radically different from the Catholic vision. The Catholic vision of unity, you have it in the Litany of All Saints. Ut omnes errantes ad unitatem ecclesiae revocare digneris. Terrogamus audinos. We ask God that He may call all those which are erring, which are in error, which are outside, that He may call them back, revocare, to the unity of the Church. Ad unitatem ecclesiae revocare digneris. That's the Catholic vision. The Catholic says, I believe in the one Church. The unity of the Church is already there, and the Church cannot lose it. So if we say that we have to foster unity, it only means we have to try to have these people get out of the unity in again. But the Church is one. And when somebody goes out, it does not divide the Church. No, they cut themselves out of the Church. It's not the same. It's like a branch which you would cut from the tree, but you don't divide the tree. The Protestant, for them, the tree is divided. It's a totally different vision. Totally different. You have to understand that when a Protestant says, now we have to look for unity, they never put in question the very principle of Protestantism. The sola scriptura, which means the Holy Ghost is going to give His light to anybody who is reading the Gospel, which is the very principle of division, is never put in question by the Protestants who want unity. And so the unity which they are going to seek is absolutely not the same than the one which the Catholic Church is promoting. At the time of the Council, there was a way of speaking of ecumenism which introduced the word Catholic ecumenism, to distinguish it from the Protestant perspective. That's why also the Catholic Church has never been a member of the Ecumenical Council of the Churches. But what we see now, the way they behave, the way they practice ecumenism now, it's the Protestant way. The Catholic way has been dropped. And what I say here is not just a pure understanding of us. It's them who say it. Cardinal Casper, the 4th of February, year 2000, in the Osservatore Romano, a full page of explanation of the development of ecumenism. And he explains how Pius the 11th is against this type of affairs of the Protestants, mortalium animos. He explains how Pius the 12th is making some openings, but very, very cautious, and explain all the dangers and so on. But he remains, Pius the 12th remains totally in the Catholic vision. No, Casper explains, with the council we change, there's a switch. We go from the ecumenism of the comeback to a new one, to the one of the common path towards unity in the reconciled diversity. Common path towards unity in the reconciled diversity. If you do not exactly grasp what it means, be happy. Because the reconciled diversity is something very, very curious. The practical, I think I've already told you once this episode, this story, but it is so striking. It's such an illustration of what I've just told you. And you cannot say that it is an exaggeration. It's really done. It's happening in Rome, in the Curia. There's a bishop, schismatic bishop, who comes to us and says, my poor life is all rubbish. I regret what I've done. I want to come back to the church. And he says, but I want to be traditional. And I tell him, listen, anyway, the only way, if you want to be off of many problems, is to deal directly with Rome. And he has the best ecumenical relations with Rome. Not only with Rome. He is a schismatic, non-Catholic bishop. When the parish priest in Lisbon, the Catholic parish priest, cannot say the Mass because he has an impediment, he asks this bishop, which gladly says the Mass for him at his place in the Catholic parish, and everybody's happy. It's a scandal. But no, you see, with ecumenism, no problem. So, he goes to Rome, but he's in constant contact with us, in time, so what should I say now, and so on. And he meets with the prefect, cardinal prefect of the Congregation of the Bishops. At the time it was Cardinal Moreira Neves, Brazilian, so they speak the same language. And you have this bishop who says to the cardinal, I regret what I've done, I want to come back to the church, I want to convert. And you have the cardinal who says to him, but your lordship, it's not necessary. You don't need to convert. Since the council, things have changed. Ooh. And so this poor bishop asks then, well, what do you think then if I join the Society of St. Pius X? And you have the cardinal, good heavens, don't do that. They are fossils. You see the dinosaurs? Don't do that, they are fossils. The following day, the same cardinal calls again. Listen, I have reflected what you told me yesterday. I think it would be good if you would meet Casper. Meeting with Casper. Casper says also, I've heard you want to convert. Do you know Utrecht? Utrecht is a town in Holland, but it's also a line of bishops, of absolutely not Catholic bishops, Jansenists, super modernists, whereas he's Holland. And you have this Bishop Raposo, the Portuguese, who answers to, at the time, Bishop Casper. Oh yes, I know them. They are our modernists. Nevertheless, Casper continued by saying, you know, I have very good relations with them. May I suggest you that you join them? You see, that's ecumenism in Rome, by Rome. Somebody knocks at the door, says, I want to come back. And Rome shuts the door and invites such a person to join a highly modernistic, schismatic group. That's ecumenism. We will push Raposo, this bishop, he will go 3 times to Rome. The last time, Cardinal Casper, literally, in the name of ecumenism, will refuse his conversion. I cannot receive you in the church because of ecumenism. When you hear that, you have to reflect and say, so what's then ecumenism? What is this common path towards unity when you throw people out of the boat? What is this? I have different papers in front of me. I don't know whether you are ready to go for another, don't know, sometime. Let's try. First, we can look at different aspects. You see there that what they do is reflected. They have a whole coherent thinking, attitude. They know what they do. It's not just playing by ear. How are we going to deal with this group there or there and so on? No. They know what they do. So let's start with this part here. This part, which I say, this part is philosophical, because Casper is going to give different reasons of this ecumenism. He starts with a philosophical presupposition. I will have to explain you what is a person, because he starts there. What is the definition of the person? If I tell you it's the last principle of non-communicability, I don't know whether it helps you. So let's try to explain. It's me, it's I. When somebody say I, there you have the person. And precisely this I, this me, is the being to which is attributed something which at the same time you do not attribute, you do not communicate to somebody else. That's why we speak of the last principle of non-communicability. And this subject will be the one who will receive, let's say, the merit for the actions. It will be the principle of responsibility. Somebody is doing something, who did it? You? Okay, you did that work, you are responsible, either to receive a recompense, a merit, or a punishment. So that's the person, which is this subject of all these things, which is the subject of right. The right, it is all the justice, is always attributed to a person, either a physical person or a juridical person. So the state will be considered to a certain extent, as a person. The parish, the township, all these have a moral personality, and that's why, for example, they are capable of making lawsuits. The state is not going to accept a lawsuit from an entity without a juridical personality. Okay, you may think, what's that to do with ecumenism? Now, the definition which I've just given to you there has been changed in the 20th century by a new philosophy, which is called Personalism. Now I read Casper and try to explain because it's not very easy. Dialogue is one of the most fundamental concepts of the 20th century philosophy and is related to today's personalist way of thinking. It may be enough to mention the names of Martin Buber, Franz Rosenzweig, Ferdinand Ebner, Emanuel Levinas and others. The young Polish professor Karol Wojtyla, with his philosophy of love and responsibility, was influenced too by this kind of personalistic thinking. This new trend emerging in the 20th century, characterized by dialogical philosophy, marked the end of the Western monological thinking and implied self-transcendence of the person towards the other. If you want, in other words, till then we said the person, that's this thing which we cannot give to another one. Little story, little Johnny, home, he's still little, and he sees up to the drawer there's a very interesting jar, or maybe it's marmalade. Okay, so he starts the climbing, very difficult operation. Of course, man must not be too close during that operation. Finally, he grabs the jar, everything falls to the floor, there's marmalade everywhere. So, Mom comes. Who did that? And John is a little bit shaking. It's not me, it's my hand. You see, a responsibility. The person, me. It's not me. And when Mom is punishing Johnny, she may give the little blow on the hand, but it's really Johnny which is punished and not the hand.